Hello and welcome back to the Impossible Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Architect Anna and I'm an entrepreneur on a mission to do the impossible. And today we're going to be talking about designing a future you can actually live in. And the reason I wanted to talk about this was because I was thinking about my ideal day. I'm going to ask you to do the same in just a second. So if you think about what would your ideal day look like, the problem is, when I thought about that, it did not match up with my goals, did not match up with my long-term goals. I was like, if that's my ideal day, how am I supposed to achieve these things? So, in case your vision doesn't quite match up with what you really truly want, this episode is for you, at least to think about it. Because I think, again, awareness is a great place to start. So, if you are now aware, oh, what I really want my day to day to look like does not match my vision for my goals and what I want to do long term, then that's maybe something to think about now because I am very much trying to help people become the architect of their life. So it doesn't have to be a complete conflict. It just might mean that there's more designing that needs to happen in the process. So if you had to design your perfect day, what would it look like? Are you waking up at a certain time? Are you waking up without an alarm? That was one of the things I wanted. I was like, I want to wake up without an alarm. And I was like, yeah, but then how do you do all of these things? How do you go speak at these events? How do you have all of these trainings and all of this stuff that going on if you don't have an alarm? That seems kind of risky. I was like, I want to be able to walk for 2 hours whenever it's sunny. I mean, if I moved to a country that was sunny more regularly, would not be an issue. But I live in London, England, so sometimes a bit of a problem. So I was like, okay, that doesn't quite match up with having like a very busy schedule. And I was like, okay, and several days a week, I would want to make sure that I just am not doing anything so that I can have time to like think and be creative and strategize without constantly delivering. I was like, okay. But it didn't match up with, the types of businesses that I want to grow and run and the types of work that I want to do over the next few years. So I was like, okay, I'm going to need to design around this. So I kind of figured out a system of what I would need to do, what I would need to sell, at what price point to how many people, and how often I would deliver it to make sure that I could still potentially build something on a day-to-day basis from a lifestyle perspective that I was happy with. And maybe the same will be true for you. So one of the things that I noticed about myself, and it's good to think about, you know, the way that you operate and what works for you and what doesn't, is that my energy levels are shot. I mean, I do quite a lot and I try and do it as efficiently as possible because I am tired all the time. All the time. Sometimes, I mean, like, I try and put so much energy out there in any of the work I do in my podcast, in my social media content, in my AI training, in my public speaking, in my AI, like in my leadership coaching. I try and put everything into it. But of course, that can be quite draining once you give everything. So I realized after that happens, I tend to have a couple days where my energy basically has collapsed and I sort of need to stay in bed. I watch a lot more TV than people think. And after that, if I then have to deliver something very high energy again, I start to have these anxiety spikes throughout those days. So instead of just relaxing, I start to feel guilty about it and I start to be anxious about the work coming up. So I realized the best design for me in a week would be potentially having 1 to 2 very high energy days and then maybe 1 to 3 days of down and then 3 to 4 days, depending on how many days, of basically like strategic work, like mind work that is not on camera, not delivering anything to anyone else, so that I can just kind of focus inward. I think sometimes you really need to actually not be around people so much when you're trying to develop things. There can be too much noise. There can be people's opinions and their thoughts and strategies and ideas. And it's like sometimes to actually execute, you just need to have one thing in mind and not get confused by all the other chaos going on. So that's something I realized with how I operate at the moment. I'm also trying to work towards having more energy so that I don't have to go through this system, but I'm kind of assuming this might be the amount of energy I have forever. So I'm trying to design around it. So if you're someone who potentially has like health problems or chronic fatigue or whatever, it might be that you actually need to design a system that will help you live the best version of your life and still try to accomplish your goals. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can put them together. It just takes a little bit of design and finesse. So that's what this episode is about. So I know my goals are massive. And if you look at some of the biggest CEOs in the world, they're working like crazy hours. They're like, up 3, 5 a.m. They're working 12 to 14 hours a day. And I was like, I at the moment, physically do not have the energy to do that. How could I possibly scale anything to that size if I cannot work to that level? I was like, I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out a way to do it smarter. Whether that means that I'm going to be building AI systems, building AI agents, creatively organizing subscriptions and licenses together so that they can run more smoothly without me needing to touch and look at everything. That's one way. I'm also working on designing a business type that is much more scalable and very much like hands off. Because the more touch points you have, the more complicated it can get and the more draining it can be. So, depending on what you've got going on, it might be that like an ideal day to you does not actually match what you truly want from your life. Like if your ideal day is to like, see friends and cook and work out and go do things, but none of that ideal day involves work, but you also want to have like a very comfortable lifestyle, they might not necessarily match because you want to have as many of your ideal days as possible. Some of the best like entrepreneurs I've seen out there, they basically designed a perfect day and then they just do it over and over again because it's what works for them. So work does not feel like work because it's part of a balanced day. It's more sustainable. So I think it's important to design that in because otherwise you could work towards burnout. It could become not fun for you. It's kind of like you hear about ice cream testers sometimes, or, food testers, or people who work in food shops like ice cream shops or these are just examples. But basically, they're around it so much that it no longer becomes fun or tasty to them. And that can be true for business owners as well. If you start a business based on a hobby that you love, but then you've got customers and clients and sales and marketing and all that other and admin and all that other stuff in there, it can then start to turn towards resentment and something you don't love anymore. So you want to make sure that you've designed balance into the process. So that's the first point. Think about your perfect day and do your long-term goals fit with that perfect day? And then also like think about the wider picture of that. So if you're doing things, kind of like what's actually going on? Like how much do you want to fit into like a week or a month? What do you want to have on a regular basis? If you're someone who wants to be a part of a bunch of different networking organizations, amazing, cool. How much does that cost you per month? Okay, great. How much does that mean you need to have coming in each month? Like if you actually designed your perfect life, you can actually figure out the expenses of that life. You can figure it out on a monthly basis and then determine how much you actually need to have coming in to make that happen. So I know I'm someone who wants to have therapy, mental therapy, as well as physical therapy, like maybe a personal trainer, maybe a personal fight trainer. I'm a secondary black belt, but I'm very much out of shape in the sense that I haven't done martial arts in years because of a knee injury. I would love to get back into that after my reconstructive knee surgery. So you could absolutely do these things. You just need to figure out, like, okay, well, I'm in London. How much is that going to cost for those two things? If I wanted to have like a massage once a month or get a chiropractor to like, or someone to improve my posture, how much is that going to cost? Great. How much do I need to earn? You can start to figure that out and design a lifestyle that fits what you truly want in that lifestyle. I know that I want to go to one major conference or cool networking event a quarter, so like once every 3 months, and like that can cost maybe a couple $1,000, a couple thousand pounds, really depends on the event. So it's like, okay, great. Factor that in. Of course, that's a business expense. So entrepreneurs out there, you figure out what's going to be a business expense. If I wanted to improve my speakings, so I can speakings better, I could get a speaking coach, and that would be a business expense because of how much I speak. Podcasts, public speaking, AI training. If I wanted to remove all of the ums and likes, I could have that as part of a business expense. Posture is more questionable. If I could get someone to fix my posture so that I stand better on stage, maybe not a business expense. But for you in your industry, look at it. For people who are, I think, models, they can get lots of things included, like nails, hair, gym membership sometimes. But again, it depends on your industry. So look at it and design a future that fits perfectly with what you want. Oh, yeah. Also, if you do want a lot of these things, you also have to factor in the amount of time that it takes to manage them. So from a financial perspective, if you want to pay for all of these things, you actually need to manage wealth. Like that's a thing. There's actually like jobs that's their only thing. And I don't mean accountants. I mean, there's like a chief wealth officer, which is for an individual who has a lot of money, they can hire someone and their only job is to manage their money well, like where to invest it, where to put it so that it continues to grow. Goals, to be honest, to be able to get a chief wealth officer. manage all my money and make more of it. Great. That would be awesome. But yes, it's a thing like managing when you get, I mean, when it's not me, but like when you get really, really wealthy, that's like takes a lot of your time. So, or I mean, you lose it. Takes a lot of your time to manage it well, or you lose it. So think about that as part of your process and what you want involved. Oh, and this is like a good part to kind of like wrap up the episode. It's not going to be a really long one, but if it's helpful, like I tend to think of a lot of things in monetary value. I find it really helpful for me, especially from a business perspective. I try to be as transparent when I talk about money as possible. I try and think about it in a strategic way quite a lot. So if it's helpful for you to also think about things in a monetary way to help motivate you, you can think about minutes in a day as money. So if you had a certain number of minutes in the day, every single day, and at the end of the day, they disappeared forever, what would you do if that was money? So, money wise, there are, I think this is right, 1,440 minutes in a day. So imagine you get $1,440 every single day. If you don't spend them, they disappear and you can never spend them again. So you want to spend them wisely. So let's say you sleep 8 hours, which I think is like 480 minutes, is like 8 hours. So that's already gone. So that's gone. It's been spent, but I consider that being spent wisely. You still have $960 left. So let's say you roughly have $1,000 a day or 1,000 minutes that you can spend wisely. What are you going to spend them on? If you know, like, to reach your goals, you need to spend a certain amount of minutes on them every day. What would it be? If it's 45 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, even 15 minutes, like even just 1% of your day, if you could spend it and get closer and closer to your goals, how would you spend them? So again, once they're gone, they're gone. So if it's helpful to think about minutes as money, then that might be something that would be good. And then you just think about how would you spend it? How would you spend it? You've got this amount of money every single day. How are you going to spend it? And I try and think of that. So if I'm wasting like half an hour here or a couple hours there on a productive day, not on an off day, on a productive day, I start to look at why that happened. Is that something that's not getting me closer to where I want to go? Is it something that's helping from a sustainability perspective to so I maintain my energy levels? Or is it just a waste of my time? Because if it's a waste of your time as a business owner, it's a waste of money, to be honest. And it's not all about money, but at the end of the day, you, as a business owner, cash flow is king, and you need to think about things from a monetary perspective if you want to move things forward. And the way that I see it, and like, feel free to disagree with me, but if you want to have a really big impact on this world, it's going to cost a lot of money, to be honest. Like, I can't see another way. I know there are people that have gotten, they've gotten viral on the social media, they've gotten virality, and then they've been able to do things from there. But that is harder to achieve and orchestrate. Whereas if you actually want to help millions and millions of people, you have to assume that it's going to cost millions and millions of dollars. So it really depends on the level of impact that you want to have. Um, Someone who wants to really have a really high impact on the world in my lifetime, ideally leaving it better than how I found it when I was born, then that is something that I need to work on and also needs to balance out with me being a human, right? I have an operating system as a human, just like you do. I'm not trying to think of myself like a robot, but how do I operate well? What does my body need to perform at the best of its ability? What does my mind need? Does it need a certain amount of sleep, nutrition, exercise, social interaction? What do I actually need? And then making sure I design that into my system and my days and my weeks and my months so that I can achieve my long term goals, which is what I'm hoping that this podcast will help you do as well. So that's it on today. That's it on designing a future you can actually live in, not a future that like sounds great, but wouldn't actually work for what you really want on a day-to-day basis. And next up, we're going to be talking about not shrinking your dream, but shrinking the timeline to achieve your dream, which sounds contradictory, but we'll jump into it. So I will see you in the next episode, and I hope you have a great day. But take the time after this episode to just think, what does your ideal day look like? And does that match up with your long-term goals? If not, it's not a problem. It just might take a little bit of design. Have a discussion with a chatbot, see what you can do to blend them together. All right, bye.